Anyway, the next speaker should have been Ramboll engineers, who were the engineers for the Gerald's Bridge in Norwich. Unfortunately, they couldn't come, and so I've made a very, very quick presentation, which is going to be my life history in about 6 minutes. So, firstly, when I was a student, I was in Kaiserslautern for half a year, and that really kind of inspired me to have the freedom and the time to travel around Central Europe, visiting lots of interesting modern buildings and architecture. And I guess from that experience, I decided that it's quite good to be in another country, to be able to travel around and look at places. So I then spent a summer in Norway, and this was very fortunately my view from my bedroom window every morning, with the sun rose across the sea of this small island I was living on. And I got to design a Viking archaeological museum in a competition, which won the competition. And then from there, I got to travel around to visit buildings I wanted to see, and was quite interested by sort of European movements such as biobiology, which translates to building biology, which talks about a lot more holistic ideas of ecology. And I guess coming back to Norwich, I was maybe slightly bored at work, so I started to research Max Bill, who's a Swiss Bauhaus architect, and actually the little red, blue and yellow sculpture in the middle there is by Max Bill. And this is a picture of myself in Max Bill's house, surrounded by lots of lovely gold sculptures and concrete art. Then I had a little travel to Mongolia, and I kind of was quite inspired by these three little guys. They have a little wire coat hanger, basically, wrapped around their shoes, which made a lovely sledge. Probably wouldn't meet health and safety legislation in the UK, but they were having a lot of fun, and it was nice to see people that have nothing enjoying themselves. From there I went to Japan, and this is something which quite impressed me in Japan. There's a very strong culture and history of aesthetics, but there's also a very keen interest in modern architecture. And whereas I think in the UK we're slightly afraid of modern architecture, and this is actually a little piece of street furniture by Klein Dyson, who are the European architects that came up with the idea of PechaKucha nights. And it's just a fun piece of street furniture. They helped me get a job at Richard Rogers' office, which is probably my first experience working for, dare I say, after Thomas has just spoken, a star architect. And this was a building which I kind of quite enjoyed. It's literally basically on an industrial estate, and you think of industrial estates around Norwich, and they're quite bland and boring, and this is just kind of fun. The structure on the outside was very economical. It used a third of the steel of a normal building, so it was quite a good cost saving in that. Being in Japan, I also quite liked the modern aesthetic. This is a building by Fumiko Maki, and I look at an arcade building around the riverside in Norwich, and you think, a beautiful, pretty white building like this reflecting the water could be quite attractive. And again, the next building here is by Kazuko Seijimaya. It's a very simple cafe building in a park. There's nothing particularly special about the park, but it's just a very nice little building sat there. Whilst in Japan, I was very fortunate to be offered the chance to spend time in Taro Ando's office. Taro Ando is quite a famous architect from Japan, and this is a building he designed, a children's museum, and it was just kind of a nice experience to get to be in his office, and I had to sign a secrecy agreement to say that I would never ever divulge to any other European as to where his office is for some reason. I think they get pestered by Europeans. From there, I kept going east until I got to Seattle, and this is a building by Stephen Hall, which I worked on, which is the Bellevue Art Museum. It's a very simple kind of cube with stained red concrete, and each of the cuts of the building is made either of aluminium or glass to let light into the space. The office I was working in also then designed this, which is the Evergreen State College. It's quite a sort of green, hippie-ish sort of college, and this building was the first academic building in America to get the highest environmental rating, and yet it was actually built with in the lowest 5% of cost index, which kind of, for me, showed that you could make good, sustainable architecture at a low price. The next project was a law school for the University of Washington, And I think I impressed the design architects that were based in New York with this. The principal of the office insisted that I was the person who was leading the design in Seattle, which gave me the lovely opportunity to have nice expense-paid trips to New York, and getting to be in New York both sides of September 11th, unfortunately. The Twin Towers are still there on this trip. And I guess back in Seattle in a second, there's a small office which were based in Portland, which I quite liked. They're actually architects, but this is just a sculpture called the Mary Hill Outlook. It's just a very simple, concrete, sculptural piece of artwork which overlooks this valley in the Oregon. From Seattle, I ended up coming back to London and working for Munch and Meck and Marshall Architects on another art gallery in America, ironically, and then a few housing projects like Gainsborough Studios and This Is Nile Street in London. And just, for me, it's sort of interesting social housing done for the same budgets as what social housing here is done, but it's just, for me, kind of interesting. From there, I went to work at Foster's, and this is probably the largest project I've worked on, which is a $400 million extension to the Boston Museum of Fine Art. It's the sort of main spine in the middle of the building there. Then from Foster's, coming back to Norwich, and I guess going back here to Dessau in Germany and looking at the Bauhaus buildings. This is one of the master houses, I think, where Paul Klee would have been teaching. I'm very vain, aren't I? Look at me, taking pictures of myself. And then establishing my little office here. One of my projects was on the Channel 4 program, The Perfect Home. Unfortunately, I've had lots of problems with very strange planners and things here, and this is unfortunately the only building which has actually got properly finished in that time. And actually, Joe helped me out on the lighting on here, but not a great deal. So I'm sure he doesn't want to take responsibility for it. Anyway, thank you.